At my son's wedding, I was the last to be served, cold, soggy leftovers. I smiled faintly through tears as he leaned into his bride and said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, "She's used to what life leaves behind." Laughter erupted. His friends, his wife's family, even his father. I pressed my trembling hands into my lap, forcing my face into a polite mask. Not after everything I'd sacrificed, the dress I helped pick out, the down payment I quietly gave them for their first home, the years I worked 2 jobs to give this boy a chance at life. And now, I was just a joke. I slipped away from the noise and flowers that suddenly smelled like insults. No one noticed me leave. Not my son, not his new wife, not even my sister. By the time I got home, the tears came hot and fast. At 2 a.m., I sat in the dark kitchen, staring at the glow of my laptop as I typed, "You've made it clear where I stand in your life. I won't bother you again." I pressed send. The next morning, my son read my email at breakfast. His hands shook as he set down his coffee. Across from him, his wife smirked over her toast and said, "She's overreacting. Don't let her ruin our happiness with her drama." And in that moment, something in him shifted, but not in the way I'd hoped. 2 days passed. 2 long, hollow days with no calls, no texts, nothing but the echo of my own thoughts in this empty house. I told myself he was busy, that he just needed time to cool off, to understand how deeply his words had cut. But deep down, I knew better. When the doorbell rang that afternoon, my heart lurched. I rushed to the door, hoping, God help me, hoping it was him. It wasn't. It was Mrs. Ellery from next door, holding her little dog in her arms. "Oh, Margaret," she chirped, adjusting her oversized sunglasses. "Did you hear the news? Daniel and his wife bought a big house in the city. Gorgeous place. I saw the photos on Facebook. Looks like they're settling in beautifully." Her words landed like a fist to my gut. They bought a house?" I asked, my voice thin. "Oh, yes. I thought you'd know. It's all over social media." How lovely for them. But as she turned to leave, my knees felt weak. They'd bought a house. A big house. And it wasn't even worth a phone call. As soon as she left, I went to my phone. Against my better judgment, I opened the app I deleted months ago, Facebook. And there it was, a post from my daughter-in-law, Emily. First family dinner in our new home, Red Heart. So grateful for fresh beginnings and family love. The photo showed a beautifully set dining table, candles glowing, wine glasses raised in a toast. My son was there, smiling, arm draped around Emily's shoulder. And there, in the corner of the frame, sat her parents, her family, not me. Not the woman who worked herself to the bone to give Daniel every chance in life. Not the woman who co-signed his first apartment lease because his credit wasn't good enough. Not the woman who drained her savings to help him pay off his student loan so he could start his marriage without debt. No, I wasn't invited. I wasn't even told. I stared at that glowing screen as tears blurred the words. Family love. It wasn't a mistake. This wasn't an oversight. This was a message. I shut off the phone and sat perfectly still in the dim light of the kitchen. There was a time when Daniel would have driven across town just to bring me a slice of pie from a bakery he knew I loved. There was a time when I was the first person he called with good news, bad news, any news, but that Daniel was gone. This new Daniel didn't think twice about leaving me out. My fingers ached as I gripped the edge of the table. I tried to breathe through the tightness in my chest, but the sobs came anyway, ugly, choking sobs that left me trembling. I deleted the app. I didn't want to see any more. But I couldn't erase the truth that had settled in my bones. I wasn't part of their family anymore. The phone rang late that night. I almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen, Evelyn, made me pause. My sister. She rarely called. Maybe she heard about the wedding. Maybe she'd sensed something was wrong. Maybe she would tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like I'd been erased. I answered with a trembling, "Hello?" "Margaret," she said, her voice sharp as ever. "I saw photos from Daniel's wedding. Why didn't you tell me you'd been seated way in the back?" People were whispering. My heart sank. "Evelyn," I began softly, "I didn't want to burden you." "Burden?" she snorted. Margaret, don't you see? You do this to yourself. You cling to Daniel like he's still your little boy. No wonder he's pushing you away. You smother people. You always have. The words hit harder than any shove. You've spent your life making him feel guilty for being happy. Of course his wife doesn't want you around all the time. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. You have to accept, Evelyn continued, her tone icy, that you're not the center of his world anymore. Let them live their lives. Stop being so intense. I bit down hard on my lip, forcing back the tears. Maybe you're right, I said finally, my voice calm. Of course I'm right, she said. And Margaret, for your own dignity, stop showing up uninvited. It's embarrassing, for everyone. When the call ended, I sat motionless in the dark kitchen, the phone still in my hand. Evelyn's words didn't just hurt. They cracked something open in me. For years, I've swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every cruel little smirk Daniel's wife sent my way. I let him cut me out of his life, one piece at a time, because I couldn't bear to lose him completely. But now I saw it clearly. They weren't pushing me away out of love or even indifference. This was about control, about power. I thought back to the way Emily's lips curled into that perfect little smile when she told me at the wedding, "Don't worry, Margaret, we'll take care of you." It wasn't kindness. It was condescension. And Daniel just stood there and let her say it. A memory flashed. Daniel at 15, screaming at his father, "Don't you dare talk to my mother like that." Back then, he defended me like a soldier guarding his queen. Now he let his wife poison him against me. No, I wouldn't cry for them again. Not one more tear. If they wanted me gone, I'd grant their wish. But not as the helpless, pitiful woman they thought I was. When I left, they wouldn't even realize what they'd lost. Not until it was far too late. I poured myself a glass of water with steady hands. The glass didn't tremble once. The old me, the soft, forgiving, begging version, died tonight. And in her place stood someone Daniel and Emily had never met before, someone they should fear. It was raining that morning. I should have stayed home, but I couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, this was all a misunderstanding. I baked Daniel's favorite cake, lemon drizzle, and wrapped it carefully in foil. It felt ridiculous to show up unannounced, but I couldn't stand the silence anymore. 2 hours later, I pulled up to their new house. It was even bigger than I imagined, a pristine 2-story in the city with manicured hedges and a stone path leading to a heavy oak door. The kind of house I dreamed of owning once, back when I was young and still believed hard work would buy me security. I stepped out of the car, clutching the cake like a peace offering. My heels clicked against the stone path as I walked to the door. I pressed the bell and waited. Footsteps. The door opened, and there she was. Emily. Her face froze when she saw me. "Oh," she said flatly, "it's you." "Hello, Emily," I said softly. I thought I'd drop by to see the new house. I brought a little something." I held up the cake with a trembling smile. Her eyes flicked to the cake and back to me. "This really isn't a good time, Margaret." I forced a laugh. "It won't take long. I'd love to just pop in, say hello. See Daniel." Emily stepped out slightly, pulling the door halfway closed behind her. "This is our space now," she said, her voice clipped. "You need to call before you come over. It's not about you anymore." My breath caught in my throat. I didn't mean to intrude. Her lips curled into a smirk. "You're making this awkward. Daniel and I have a lot on our plate right now. Honestly, it's better if you give us some space." Something moved in the shadows behind her. Daniel. He didn't even come to the door. He just stood there in the hallway, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Daniel?" I called softly. He didn't answer. Emily sighed, her eyes sharp as glass. "You've been here long enough, Margaret. It's time to let us live our lives without interference." Her words hit me harder than any slap. My fingers tightened around the cake tin. For a moment, I thought I might throw it at her feet, but I didn't. I placed it carefully on the doorstep instead. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "I'll leave you to it." As I turned to walk back to the car, Emily called after me. "Oh, and Margaret? You don't have to bring us baked goods anymore. We're watching our carbs." Laughter floated from inside the house as she closed the door. I stood in the driveway, rain soaking through my thin cardigan, and stared at the heavy oak door. This was no misunderstanding. They didn't forget me. They didn't want me. I climbed into my car, hands steady on the wheel, and drove away without looking back. Inside, something in me hardened. They wanted space. They would get it. But when I came back into their lives, it wouldn't be with cake. It would be with fire. The envelope came on a Thursday morning. It was thick. It didn't have a return address. Just my name in neat, blocky print. I almost didn't open it. For a moment, I thought maybe Daniel had written me. Maybe he'd come to his senses and wanted to make amends. But I should have known better. My hands trembled as I tore the flap open and unfolded the papers inside. The first words hit me like a brick to the chest. Notice to vacate. My vision blurred, but I kept reading. They were asking me, no, telling me to leave the guest house. The guest house I've lived in for 8 years. The guest house I renovated with my own savings. The guest house that sits on the property I bought 30 years ago. But the fine print made it clear. The property was no longer mine. I remembered it now. The day Daniel came over with his lawyer friend, telling me how much easier it would be if we transferred the deed into his name. It'll simplify the taxes, Mom. You'll still live here as long as you want. It's just paperwork. I'd signed without hesitation. Of course I had. He was my son. I trusted him. And now he was evicting me. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself, my knees threatening to give way. There was more. We appreciate your understanding as we make plans for our family's future. We require full access to the property and will arrange for your belongings to be moved. They didn't even have the decency to call. I read the last line again and again, my eyes catching on a single phrase. We require full access. That's what this was about. Control. Power. And I was in their way. That evening I sat in my chair, the letter spread out in front of me like a battle map. Emily's voice echoed in my head. This is our space now. It's not about you anymore. Daniel hadn't said a word to me in weeks. Not a single call. Not even a text. He wasn't just cutting me out of his life. He was erasing me. Erasing every sacrifice. Every night. I stayed up with him during his asthma attacks. Every weekend I worked overtime to pay for his school trips. I had poured myself into his life until there was nothing left of me. And this was my reward. The door creaked open. It was nearly midnight. I expected to find Emily's cold smirk or Daniel's downcast eyes. But it was only the wind. I sat back down at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the dark window. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked smaller somehow, but her eyes, they weren't soft anymore. They were sharp, dangerous. They wanted me out. Fine. But they forgot one thing. I still knew where every penny had come from. Every renovation, every mortgage payment, every bill. They thought they were clever. They thought they were strong. But they had no idea what kind of storm was waiting for them. And when it came, it wouldn't be loud. It would be quiet, cold, final. I folded the eviction notice neatly, placed it back in its envelope, and set it on the table. Tomorrow I would call someone who'd understand. Not Daniel, not Emily. Someone who would remind me what power feels like. It took me 3 tries to dial his number. Each time, my finger hovered over the screen, my chest tightening until I thought I might suffocate. But on the 4th try, it rang. Once. Twice. Hello? Daniel's voice. Flat. Tired. Like I was just another chore he hadn't finished yet. I swallowed hard. Daniel, it's me. A long pause. I know, Mom. I gripped the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. I got the letter, I whispered. Please, tell me it's a mistake. It's not. I flinched. Daniel, I said softly, my voice cracking. This is my home. I've lived here for years. I raised you in this house. Your father. Don't, he cut in sharply. Don't bring Dad into this. My heart dropped. In the background, I heard Emily's voice, low and cutting like glass. Is she crying? God, she's so manipulative. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Emily spoke again, louder this time. Tell her to stop guilt-tripping you. We need that property, Daniel. She's had her time. Her time. Like I was some tenant whose lease had run out. Daniel, I whispered, my voice trembling. Please, I have nowhere else to go. Don't do this to me. He sighed heavily, the sound sharp and impatient. You'll figure it out, he said finally. You always do. Emily laughed softly in the background. Honestly, she said, if she cared about your future, she'd offer to leave. But no, she's too selfish for that. Selfish. The word stuck in my chest like a blade. I thought of all the times I went without so Daniel could have more. The nights I stayed up sewing his costumes for school plays. The vacations I never took so he wouldn't drown in student debt. And now I was selfish. Stop crying, Daniel said. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Harder for who? I whispered, but he'd already hung up. The call ended with a cold click, leaving me staring at the screen. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. I sank into the chair, the phone slipping from my hand. For a long time, I didn't move, not even when the tears came. Hot, bitter tears that streaked down my cheeks, dripping onto the folded eviction letter still sitting on the table. They wanted me gone, and I had begged. I had let them hear me sobbing, choking out desperate words, like some pitiful woman with no power left. But they underestimated me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark kitchen, the old clock ticking steadily on the wall, and thought about every time I had swallowed my pride for Daniel. Every time I had excused Emily's little barbed comments and fake smiles. I thought of the years I spent believing family meant sacrifice. And for the first time, I wondered if I had been wrong all along. Maybe family isn't who you bleed for. Maybe family is who keeps their knives hidden until you're too weak to fight back. At 3 a.m., I called Dolores. I didn't expect her to answer, but she did. On the first ring. Margaret? Her voice was thick with sleep. They're evicting me, I whispered. I begged him to let me stay. He hung up. Silence. Then Dolores spoke, her voice low, steady, and dangerous. Good. You're done begging. I blinked back fresh tears. Margaret, listen to me, she said firmly. Tomorrow morning, you're calling my niece. She's a lawyer, and you're going to take back every ounce of dignity they tried to steal. I let out a shaky breath. I don't want revenge, I murmured. This isn't revenge, Dolores said coldly. This is survival, and if they want a war, you'll give them one. For the first time all night, I felt something warm in my chest. Not love, not hope, resolve. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache and eyes swollen from crying. I didn't know if I had the strength to keep fighting. But then I remembered Emily's voice on the phone the night before. She's had her time. In Daniel's cold, flat tone, you'll figure it out. You always do. They weren't going to help me. They weren't even going to pretend to care. No, they wanted me gone. At 11 a.m., Dolores pulled into my driveway. She didn't knock. She stormed in, clutching a manila folder like it was a weapon. Get dressed, she said. You have an appointment in 1 hour. I blinked up at her from my chair. Dolores, I can't afford. You can't afford not to, she snapped. You've paid for everyone else's comfort all your life. It's time you paid for your own. Before I could argue, she tossed the folder onto my lap. Inside was a business card. Rebecca Holloway. Property and estate law. She's my niece, Dolores said. Sharp as a knife, and meaner than a hornet when someone tries to push her clients around. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. The law office was small but neat. Rebecca was younger than I expected, with sleek black hair and a piercing gaze that made me sit up straighter. You're Margaret? She asked, her voice cool but not unkind. I nodded. She gestured for me to sit. Dolores gave me a quick summary. Let's hear it from you. As I spoke, my hands trembled. I told her about the guest house, the deed transfer, the eviction letter, about the years I poured into Daniel's life, about Emily's constant barbs, about how I thought family meant sacrifice. Rebecca listened silently, tapping a pen against her notepad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. They're trying to steamroll you, she said flatly. and they think you won't fight back. I swallowed hard. Do I even have a case? Her eyes glinted. You might have more than they realize. I blinked. What do you mean? Did you pay for renovations on the guest house? Yes. Everything. The plumbing, the roof, the kitchen. Did you pay utilities? Property taxes? Yes. For years. Then you've contributed financially to that property. If we can prove that, we can argue for equitable interest. At the very least, we can contest the eviction. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. You're saying, I don't have to leave? Rebecca smiled faintly. I'm saying you don't have to let them win. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the manila folder Rebecca had given me. Inside was a draft letter to Daniel's lawyer, the first shot in what could be a long war. I traced the edge of the paper with my finger. For years, I chose Daniel over myself. Not anymore. As I sipped my tea, my phone buzzed on the table. A text. From Daniel. Why are you doing this? You're forcing me to choose between you and Emily. A second later, another message came through. This one from Emily. You really think a lawyer can save you? Pathetic. You're embarrassing yourself, Margaret. Stop before you destroy what little family you have left. I stared at the screen. My hands didn't tremble this time. My chest didn't tighten. Instead, I smiled. A small, dangerous smile. They had no idea what I was capable of. The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a text. It was a voicemail. Emily's voice, dripping with venom. You think this little stunt will make him love you again? He's embarrassed by you. You're nothing to him now. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I pressed play again and hit record. This time, their words would work against them. 2 weeks. That's how long it took for the first legal letters to land on Daniel and Emily's doorstep. Rebecca moved fast, firing off a cease and desist on the eviction, demanding proof of ownership contributions, and flagging suspicious financial transfers. They thought you'd go quietly, she said, her voice sharp as steel. Let's show them they were wrong. And for the first time in years, I felt steady, not happy, not safe, but steady. On the third day, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. Why are you doing this? You're forcing me to choose between you and Emily. I stared at his words. Forcing him to choose? No, Daniel, you already chose. I didn't reply. On the 6th day, Rebecca forwarded me an email from Emily's lawyer. It was thinly veiled venom, accusing me of financial manipulation and warning of the emotional toll on their growing family. I read it twice, then laughed. Not loud, not bitter, just a cold, quiet laugh that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Emotional toll? As if they hadn't spent months bleeding me dry, draining my bank account, isolating me, positioning themselves like predators circling their prey. They weren't used to being challenged, and now that I'd raised my head, they didn't know what to do. Day 8, a voicemail from Emily. You think this little stunt will make him love you again? You're embarrassing yourself. You're nothing to him now. Her voice was thick with rage. I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I saved the voicemail. Rebecca's words echoed in my mind. Every insult is evidence. Let them talk. Day 11. A private investigator Rebecca recommended handed me a manila folder. Inside were printouts of transactions from my accounts, thousands of dollars drained into Emily's name under the guise of home renovations and family expenses. There were screenshots, too. Emily's social media posts, lavish vacations, designer handbags, new furniture, all bought while I lived frugally in the guest house. I traced my finger along the photos, my jaw tightening. This wasn't negligence, this was theft. Calculated. Deliberate. Rebecca's voice was calm but deadly when I handed her the folder. They think they've won, Margaret. They don't know they're building their own gallows. Day 13. A delivery arrived at my door. An envelope. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, scrawled in Emily's handwriting. Drop the lawyer, Margaret, or we'll tell everyone how unstable you've become. How we took you in after your surgery, because you couldn't even walk. How you've been manipulative for years, demanding we give up our lives for you. Do you really want people to know the truth? The paper smelled faintly of her perfume. I smiled as I folded it neatly. They didn't realize they just handed me a weapon. Threatening an elderly woman into signing away her rights? Courts don't look kindly on that. Day 14. I sat across from Rebecca in her office, sipping tea as she read through Emily's warning letter. "This is good," she said, her eyes glittering. "Very good." "They're panicking." "They should be," I murmured. Rebecca looked at me for a long moment. "You're calmer than most of my clients." "They think I'm weak," I said quietly. "That's their mistake." On the 15th day, my phone buzzed again. A text from Daniel. "Emily says you're setting us up, that you're recording calls and saving messages. Is that true?" I stared at the screen, my lips curling into the faintest smile. "Is that true?" "Oh, Daniel. If you have to ask, you already know the answer." I placed my phone face down on the table and let the quiet stretch. The storm was coming, and for once, I wasn't the one caught in its path. It came at 2:17 a.m. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Emily's name. I didn't answer. She called again, then again. On the fourth call, she didn't wait for me to pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice, when I played it back, was nothing like the saccharine sweetness she draped over me for years. It was venom, raw and hissing. "You think this little stunt will make Daniel love you again? He's embarrassed by you, Margaret. Do you hear me? Embarrassed. He only kept you around because I told him it was the right thing to do. And you repay us by dragging our names through the mud, filing lawsuits, talking to lawyers like some pathetic old hag who doesn't know when to quit?" There was a pause, just long enough for me to hear her breathing hard, like an animal cornered. "You're nothing to him now. Nothing. You've made sure of that. And I swear to God, if you keep this up, I will make sure everyone knows how toxic you are. The neighbors, your church friends, even your bridge group. You'll be a laughingstock." The line went quiet for a beat. Then she spat out one final sentence. "You should have died during that surgery. It would have been easier for everyone." Click. The voicemail ended. For a moment, I sat perfectly still in the dark. No tears came, no anger. Just clarity. This was Emily, unmasked. All those years I'd convinced myself she didn't mean the little barbs, the passive-aggressive comments, the cold smiles. Now, I saw her clearly. And Daniel? He wasn't innocent. His silence made him her accomplice. The next morning, I forwarded the voicemail to Rebecca. When she called back, her voice was sharper than usual. "This changes everything," she said. "They're threatening you, Margaret. Harassment, coercion. We can build a stronger case with this alone." "Good," I said simply. "You sound calm," Rebecca noted. "I am calm," I replied, "because I wasn't fighting for Daniel's love anymore. I was fighting for me." That afternoon, I went through my old filing cabinet. Receipts, bank statements, copies of emails where I paid for their wedding photographer, their honeymoon flights, even the down payment on their first car. Every piece of paper was a breadcrumb leading back to me. They wanted to erase me from their lives. But you can't erase the one who built the foundation you're standing on. At sunset, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail this time too. "Mom?" Emily's upset. "Why are you doing this? You're making her life hell. You're making my life hell. Can't we just talk this out, like a family? If you really love me, you'll stop this nonsense before it goes too far." I pressed play again. This time, I listened carefully to the way his voice wavered, not with guilt, but with fear. They were scared. Good. The next morning, Dolores showed up at my door with 2 cups of coffee and a gleam in her eye. "You're quiet," she said, setting the cups on the table. "I'm planning," I replied. Dolores smiled. "That's what I like to hear." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the steam curl from the mugs. "Do you think they even realize what they've done?" I asked finally. "No," Dolores said, "and they won't. Not until it's too late." At noon, Rebecca called. Her voice was brisk, professional, but there was an edge to it. "Margaret, I just got word from their attorney. Daniel and Emily are planning to file a counterclaim. They're accusing you of financial abuse, saying you manipulated Daniel into signing over assets during his, quote, vulnerable years. They want to flip the narrative. For a moment, my stomach turned. They're trying to make me the villain, I murmured. Rebecca's voice hardened. They're desperate, and desperation makes people sloppy. Trust me, this will backfire. As I hung up, I stared out the kitchen window. The garden was overgrown now. Weeds choked the flower beds where Daniel once played with his toy trucks. I thought of Emily's words. You're nothing to him now. Maybe she was right, but I was about to become something they'd never forget. I stared at the blinking cursor for over an hour. The words wouldn't come, not because I didn't know what to say, but because there was too much to say. How do you condense a lifetime of sacrifice and betrayal into a single email? How do you tell your only son that the cord between you has been cut? Not by you, but by his own hands. I took a deep breath, placed my fingers on the keys, and began to type. Subject, you've made your choice. Daniel, you've made your choice. You chose a woman who sees me as a burden instead of the mother who raised you alone. You chose silence when she mocked me, absence when she humiliated me, and betrayal when you tried to strip me of my home. I am no longer your responsibility. I am no longer your burden, but do not mistake my silence for weakness. The house you're living in was built on my back, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, sleepless night by sleepless night, and I will not let you erase me from what I built. Do not call, do not write, do not step foot on my property. If you have anything to say, tell it to my lawyer. This will be the last time you hear from me. Mom, I didn't cry when I pressed send. Not this time. There were no tears left in me for Daniel. 2 hours later, Rebecca called. They received the email, she said. Their lawyer reached out. And? They're furious. Emily demanded we withdraw all legal action immediately. She threatened to take, quote, drastic measures if we don't. What kind of measures? I asked quietly. Rebecca sighed. Nothing they can win on. But they're scrambling. That's good. It means they know they're losing control. By evening, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. You think you've won? You're old, alone, and pathetic. The court won't save you. You can't undo what you signed. There was no name attached, but I didn't need one. It reeked of Emily. The next morning, Rebecca handed me a folder during our meeting. This came to me anonymously, she said. Inside were photocopies of medical forms, old prescriptions, post-surgery reports, and a highlighted note from my doctor. Patient requires assistance with daily tasks. Rebecca's jaw tightened. They're building a narrative, trying to prove you're incompetent to make legal decisions. If they succeed, they could request guardianship over your finances. They want power of attorney, I whispered. They want everything, Rebecca corrected. I closed the folder and set it aside. They're moving fast, I said. So are we, Rebecca replied. Her eyes hardened. We'll prove you're competent. And when we're done, the court will see them for exactly what they are. What's that? Leeches, she said flatly. Parasites feeding off the host until there's nothing left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the wind rattle the branches outside. Emily and Daniel thought they could scare me into submission. They thought I'd fold like I always had. But I wasn't folding. Not this time. At 3:14 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A video message. From Emily. I almost didn't open it. But something told me to watch. The screen flickered to life. Emily sat in their living room, her face twisted with rage. Daniel stood behind her, his arms crossed. You think you're clever, Margaret, she hissed. You want a war? Fine, you've got one. She leaned closer to the camera, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You've got 72 hours to drop the case. Or we'll release everything. Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice hollow. You'll regret this, Mom. I swear you will. Click. The video ended. Let's see who regrets this first, I said. The courtroom smelled like old wood and stale coffee. I sat in the front row, my hands folded in my lap. My lawyer, Rebecca, sat beside me, a stack of carefully organized files spread across the table. Across the aisle, Daniel and Emily whispered furiously to their attorney. Emily's manicured nails drummed the table in rapid-fire irritation, and Daniel's jaw was tight, his eyes darting anywhere but toward me. For years, I would have been the one looking away, but not today. Today, I stared straight at them, and for the first time, they didn't hold my gaze. The judge entered, an older man with a calm but piercing gaze. "Let's proceed," he said. Rebecca stood, her voice measured and strong. "Your Honor, the matter before you today concerns an elderly woman who has been systematically manipulated, isolated, and financially exploited by her own family. We present clear evidence that Mrs. Margaret Hale contributed substantially to the property in question and was misled into transferring ownership under false pretenses." She tapped the stack of documents in front of her. "Additionally, we submit records showing unauthorized withdrawals from Mrs. Hale's accounts, threats of coercion, and attempts to undermine her legal competency." Emily's lawyer stood, his voice smooth and dripping with false concern. "Your Honor, these accusations are unfounded. My clients have been nothing but generous to Mrs. Hale, even caring for her after her surgery when she was unable to care for herself. It's clear she's become confused and is now lashing out at the very people who supported her." I almost laughed out loud. Confused? That's what they were counting on. Me being too frail, too fragile to fight back. But I wasn't confused. I was furious. Then Rebecca played the voicemail. Emily's voice filled the courtroom, cold and sharp as a blade. "You should have died during that surgery. It would have been easier for everyone." Gasps echoed in the room. Emily froze. Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Hale," he said, turning to Emily, "did you or did you not leave this message?" Emily's face flushed crimson. I was upset." "Answer the question," the judge snapped. "Yes," she hissed. "But it's being taken out of context." Rebecca stood again, her tone steady as steel. "Your Honor, we also have evidence of fraudulent financial activity tied to Mrs. Hale's accounts, unauthorized by her, but initiated under the guise of care. The victim was isolated and pressured to hand over control of her finances and home. She slid a copy of the threat Emily had sent, "Drop the lawyer, or we'll tell everyone how unstable you've become," across the table to the judge. "This," Rebecca said, "is coercion, plain and simple." Emily's lawyer objected, but the judge silenced him with a raised hand. "Enough. I've seen enough." He turned his attention to Daniel, whose face had gone pale. "Mr. Hale, do you have anything to say in your defense?" Daniel cleared his throat, but his voice was faint. I thought we were helping her." "Helping her?" the judge repeated, his voice thick with disdain. "By evicting her from her home? By draining her accounts?" Daniel said nothing. Emily shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. The judge leaned back in his chair. "Mrs. Hale," he said, his voice softening slightly as he turned to me, "you've endured a great deal." I met his gaze, my voice calm and clear. "I'm not here to destroy them, Your Honor. I just want my life back." The judge nodded. "And you'll have it." His gavel came down. "I hereby grant," Mrs. Hale continued, "an exclusive residency in the property in question. The deed will be returned to her name effective immediately. Furthermore, the court orders Mr. and Mrs. Hale to pay all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Hale during this process. This court also recommends that an investigation be opened into the alleged financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult." Bang! The courtroom erupted into murmurs. Emily's chair screeched back violently as she leapt to her feet. "This isn't fair," she shrieked. "She's manipulating all of you. She's a bitter, lonely old woman who can't stand that we've built a better life than hers." The bailiff stepped forward, his hand outstretched in warning. "Sit down, Mrs. Hale." Emily's eyes darted wildly. "She's not done with us," she hissed to Daniel. "Don't you get it? She'll come for everything next." Daniel sank lower into his chair, silent. For the first time, I saw fear in Emily's eyes. As I gathered my papers to leave, Rebecca leaned over and whispered, "They're planning something. Be careful." I turned to glance at Emily one last time. She was staring at me, her lips moving silently around 3 words I read clear as day. "This isn't over." I smiled. No, I whispered back. It's just beginning. It wasn't over. I knew it the moment I saw their car parked at the edge of my driveway 2 nights later. The engine was off. The windows were tinted. But I could feel Emily's eyes on the house. Waiting, watching, plotting. Dolores stayed on the phone with me as I paced the living room. You know what they're doing, she said. They're not finished until you've got nothing left. I know, I murmured. They'll come at you from a different angle now. Nastier. Louder. Good, I said calmly. Let them. Because what Emily didn't know, what Daniel couldn't even imagine, was that I had already laid the trap, and they were standing dead center in it. The next morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox. An anonymous tip. Mrs. Hale is unstable. She's been hoarding dangerous medications. I fear she might harm herself or others. Attached was a blurry photo of a pill bottle on my kitchen counter. A setup. It wasn't even my prescription. They wanted the authorities to intervene, to declare me unfit, to seize control of my assets under the guise of protecting me. I smiled faintly as I handed the letter to Rebecca. They're predictable, I said. Rebecca's eyes glinted. Then it's time to spring the net. That evening, Daniel and Emily came to the house uninvited. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. They barged in, Emily leading the charge with a carefully rehearsed look of concern. Mother, she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, we heard you haven't been well. We just want to help. Daniel stayed behind her, eyes downcast, silent as ever. I sat calmly in my chair, my hands folded neatly in my lap. You're trespassing, I said. Emily's smile faltered for half a second before she recovered. Margaret, please, don't make this harder than it has to be. You're not thinking clearly. You're a danger to yourself. A danger? I echoed softly. Yes, she said, stepping closer. We've already contacted Adult Protective Services. Once they see the state you're in, they'll understand why we need to take charge of your care and your finances. Her eyes glittered with triumph. And then, she added, almost under her breath, we'll finally be done with you. Daniel flinched, but he didn't stop her. That's when the front door opened again. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by a social worker. Emily turned to them with a wide, innocent smile. Oh, thank goodness you're here, she said. We were so worried. Emily Hale, the taller officer interrupted. Emily blinked. Yes? You're under investigation for attempted fraud, elder abuse, and harassment. Her smile froze. What? The social worker stepped forward. Mrs. Hale, this Mrs. Hale, she said, gesturing to me, contacted our office last week. She provided extensive documentation, including recordings and financial records, showing a pattern of coercion and financial exploitation on your part. Emily's face drained of color. That's ridiculous, she snapped. She's lying. She's confused. The second officer cut her off. Ma'am, we've seen the evidence. Please come with us. Emily's voice rose to a shriek as they cuffed her wrists. You can't do this to me. Daniel, do something. Daniel stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Daniel, Emily screamed, if you don't fix this, we'll lose everything. For once, he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even look at her. Daniel! She shrieked again as they led her out the door, but he just stood there, staring at the floor. When the door slammed shut behind them, the house fell silent. I rose from my chair and walked past Daniel, who still hadn't moved. You know, I said softly, there was a time when you would have defended me like your life depended on it. He flinched. But now? I shook my head. You let her hollow you out. His lips parted. Mom, I didn't mean... Don't call me that. My voice was cold, steady. I don't know who you are anymore. And you don't know me either. I opened the door. Get out. He turned slowly, his shoulders slumped like a man twice his age. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sorry for him. The sun was rising as I watched his car pull away. For years, I'd begged them to see me, to love me. But I didn't need their love anymore. I had something better, myself.